Hello. In this screencast, we are going to be looking at Chapter 3, History of Treatment Toward Persons with Psychiatric Disabilities. So this particular chapter takes a look at how people have treated those with mental illness or other mental and physical disabilities since the Middle Ages. Cruel and inhumane treatment toward persons with mental illness and mental retardation was common in the Middle Ages. Individuals labeled as witches and were burned at the stake. In the Middle Ages, there was obviously no understanding of the causes and treatments of disease. Physicians at this time viewed disease and disability as often being caused by an imbalance of the humors of the body, a belief that was inherited from the Greeks. In this theory, it focused on the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. For example, black bile was thought to cause madness. So bloodletting then could possibly be a treatment for an imbalanced humor. Care for the mentally ill was left to the families. If a family could not handle it, the person could be confined to an asylum, hospital, or the like. In colonial America, it was the family's responsibility to care for the mentally ill. Those who were unlucky to not have family faced institutionalization, floggings, were confined to workhouses, and or chained to walls and floors. This is another act similar to how people were treated in the Middle Ages. And some were left to starve to death. Opposite of that, Native Americans seem to treat individuals with mental health issues and disability much better than colonial Americans. Some Native Americans held those with mental illness in high regard. They believed that these individuals had special gifts. This wasn't always the prevailing thought. Others within the community had similar views or shared similar views to the colonial Americans. Looking at mental illness in the 19th century, there were a lot of individuals in asylums. Treatment focused on quote unquote moral treatments, avoidance of immoral behavioral actions and temptations, living a healthy lifestyle, getting exercise, getting proper nutrition, and abiding by a daily schedule. There was a new respect for those who were ill. That was to show respect, to not chain them up, and to supervise their activities. Other treatments included the physical therapies. Now, those aren't physical therapies as we think about today when it comes to exercise and manual therapies. These instead were physical therapies to balance the humors. So up to the 1830s, skin was burned by caustic substances to extract poisonous humors from the body. Other treatments that fell under the physical therapies umbrella included laxatives, bleeding, opioids, hydrotherapy, and therapeutic baths. Now looking at mental illness at the turn of the century, there was a decline of use of some of those former treatments and an increase in somatic and behavioral control therapies. Use of physical restraints, straitjackets, straps to bed, confinement to cells, and being wrapped tightly in wet sheets were not uncommon. There was also forced sterilization, and this continued through the 1940s. Fever therapy was used by some physicians. It was thought that fever could cure a lot of things. This pyrotherapy was used up to the 1960s to induce fever. However, they found that once the fever went away, they still were plagued with whatever was ailing them. Other treatments that were developed included shock therapy, medications, and psychosurgery. Also developing at this time was the use of talk therapy and psychoanalysis. Successful treatment of psychiatric issues for returning veterans helped to elevate the profession of psychotherapy, and in 1944, psychiatry was designated as a medical specialty with the Office of the Surgeon General. Over time, the profession continued to grow and develop. There was then the classification of mental illness and the development of the DSM manuals. And I'm not sure what number they are up to now, but the DSM manuals have been obviously important for the evolution of psychiatry. There are issues and challenges still facing society today, and one of those is looking at mental illness and the criminal justice system. And we see examples all the time of individuals committing crimes, and obviously that bringing them back many times over and over again to the criminal justice system. How do you protect public safety and also treat these individuals in a humane way? There have been countless cases of abuse of persons with mental illness. There is a high number of individuals diagnosed with mental illness who are on the Social Security benefit rolls. And so that is probably something more of a political related issue with how do you evaluate somebody, classify them as having mental illness that meets a category in which they then would benefit from that entitlement. And then there is the stigma against people with mental illness. And of course, those of us here in this class and most people within healthcare understand the underlying causes of mental illness, of disability. And I'm not using those side by side to say that they are the same thing, but obviously individuals with mental illness and or disability, people have a different view of them. And so what can we do within society to help make those changes with things from a political perspective, with ways that we can increase access and improve our understanding on how to best help and provide support when needed to allow individuals to experience an optimal life. That is the end of this section. Go ahead and move on to the next part.